The Middle East, believe it or not, is coming together. We're getting rid of the bully of the Middle East. Iran was the bully of the Middle East. They bullied Iraq. They bullied every country. There was fear all over the Middle East with other countries. I understand that, but there was fear. But there's no fear anymore because their military capability has been knocked to hell, and there's no fear. I think the Middle East is coming together like it's never come together before.
So that's just an alternate reality. Okay, so we're gonna get to how the war is restarted and some of the devastating parts of that. But before we do that, Dave, he's talking about a bully in the Middle East. I mean, like in Washington, there really is, they live on a different planet. Like the rest of us think the bully in the Middle East is the country that attacked 7 of its neighbors, that's Israel. But they're pretending Iran that got attacked by us and got their 49 leaders executed on the first day, that they're the bullies. Yeah. What is this?
It's a ridiculous, inverse of reality. And of course, Donald Trump himself is one of the things that was most appealing about Donald Trump is in his typical kind of lack of filtered manner, is that he would say, yeah, we got a bunch of killers on our side too. We killed so many people in Iraq. I mean, think about all these wars we fought. We just blew up all these buildings, killed all these innocent people. I mean, the chutzpah. Forget even Israel, Jake. I mean, the bullies of the Middle East are the United States of America's federal government, I mean, dude, the campaigns we've fought over the last 25 years, the nerve of us to turn around and say that anybody else is the bully. I mean, just orders and orders and orders of magnitude more people have been killed by US and Israel-led foreign wars, and most of the US-led ones were really inspired and supported by Israel. Anyway, look, man, it is stunning to see how weak a position Donald Trump is in right now as he launches this third, as you, I think, correctly basically broke down, right? There was the first phase of war, which was direct military action. The second phase was the blockade and the blockade of the blockade under the kind of ceasefire thing. Then we had this brief MOU. Now we're back to fire and blockades of blockades. But of course, the big difference this time, Jank, right? Like we're on this carousel that we keep riding around and around. And now we're back to, we're gonna destroy them, we're gonna get them to capitulate. But the major difference this time is that in the last walk back round, like just last week, Donald Trump has now officially walked away from all of the original war aims, all of them. He gave up on the idea that they can enrich uranium for civilian purposes, which is all they've ever done, Jank. That's the entire thing here. So he gave up on the idea that they're not allowed to do what they've been doing this entire time. Not only did he give up on they can't be friends with Hezbollah anymore, they included a ceasefire on Hezbollah's behalf in the memorandum of understanding. So clearly he walked away from the idea that we're gonna say they can't, have terrorist proxies or whatever. Walked away, he even publicly walked away from them developing ballistic missiles. They gotta have some missiles. So it's all over. We're fighting now over the Strait and Lebanon, two things that were not an issue before the war. The Strait they closed during the war, and Lebanon, Israel launched their bonus war in there as soon as they lured us into this one. So, yeah. I mean, look, man, how do you spin this thing? And of course, as I imagine everyone listening to this show knows, there's just no reason in the world to assume that this isn't gonna go just like the first 2 rounds of it went. I mean, all of this bluster and talk about how the Strait is open and we control it and we're taking a fee off it now. Well, how are you gonna do that? And if you could do that, how come you didn't do that? It's been 4.5 months already, Jake. Now, this war that we were guaranteed isn't a forever war and is weeks and not months. It's 4.5 months into it now. If they could have done that, they would have. And the Pentagon's own assessment, I saw you and Anna covering this on the show, the Pentagon's own assessment said that it would take 6 months to militarily open the Strait of Hormuz, and that would only be after the war was concluded, meaning we couldn't do it if the Iranians were still shooting their little $20,000 drones at us, which they can do. I mean, what do we want to do here? We want to see how long the global economy can take this strait being closed. Well, Donald Trump already admitted we can't take it much more. And then we want to get back into the game of what, Jake, we're essentially trading $20,000 Iranian drones for $600,000 US missiles.
Yeah, this
How long you want to trade that game before you lose?
This is going to end very poorly. So let me give you the updates on it, and then we'll talk about the disaster that's about to ensue. So as Politico explains in a letter to Congress dated July 10th, obtained by Politico, Trump stated that the strikes that began on July 7th represent, quote, military action consistent with my responsibility to protect Americans and the United States interests, both at home and abroad. So it's official. He sent a letter to Congress. We're going back in for round 3. And then Trump said, I want to give them a chance at making a deal. And they shot first, and that was a big mistake that they shot first because we've been knocking the hell out of them. They're very difficult people. It depends on what you mean by shooting first, and besides which, Iran is no longer participating in the peace negotiations because there are no negotiations. So I don't know what Trump is talking about. We're back in quote total war. The Intercept explains Iran claimed Sunday that it quote demolished the US Army's surface-to-surface missile base in Kuwait, killing 3 American military personnel. US Central Command responded, there are 0 reports of US service member deaths or injuries in the region. Later, they had to revise that. So I'm going to tell you about how we've been lying about the casualty numbers in this war. They're far worse than we reported, or the American media reported and the US government reported. So let's continue along those lines. The Pentagon's Iran war death toll, which was last updated Friday, the Intercept continues, went up by 1. Wait, I thought it was 0, went up by 1. Pentagon statistics show a sailor died in what was provisionally deemed a non-hostile fatality with a quote, pending caveat, meaning it could later be revised to a hostile death. It was not immediately clear whether the new death listed occurred in Kuwait. So, okay, so there's one more death, and they're obviously lying about how that person died. Was it in Kuwait? We're not sure yet. And was it really 1 or was it 3? We're not sure yet. The other night I was scrolling through Shop TYT, as I'm sure you were, when I saw our awesome Banned in the UK shirt. I thought, I need that. I definitely need it. I clicked add to cart. I'm ready to dig out my wallet, but it's on the other side of the room. But right there in the checkout, glowing like a beacon, is that glorious purple Shop Pay button. One tap, boom, order placed. That's the magic of Shopify, the platform behind millions of businesses and 10% of US e-commerce, including our own Shop TYT. That purple Shop Pay button is the best converting checkout on the planet. It means fewer abandoned carts and more actual sales. If you run a business, Shopify makes it super simple to build a beautiful site with hundreds of templates and a blast email and social campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling. It's like having a full marketing team behind you. So do what we did, use Shopify. See fewer carts go abandoned and more sales go with Shopify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/TYT. That's shopify.com/TYT. But interestingly enough, the official number of dead and wounded in US for US personnel stands at what? So 200, that's a big number. 300, that's a huge number. That can't be right. Oh, it's at 428. Did you know we had 428 casualties? So it's almost never reported. Oh, look, it's a 11% increase since the first ceasefire between US and Iran was struck on April 8th. So we had a ceasefire where we had an 11% increase in casualties because we hadn't really ceased fire. So the Intercept continues reporting by the Intercept previously found that the Pentagon's official count of dead and wounded personnel is a gross undercount stemming from what one US government official called a casualty cover-up. The Defense Casualty Analysis System, which tracks deceased, wounded, ill, or injured service members for Congress and the president, is missing hundreds of known casualties. And then now let's go to the Iranian reaction, because it has not been pleasant. So since we did 140 strikes the other day, this is our 4th day in a row of bombing the hell out of Iran. There's no ceasefire left at all. So their new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, says, we pledge that we will avenge your pure blood and the blood of all those martyred in these 2 wars from the criminal and disgraced killers. This revenge is the demand of our nation, and it must certainly be carried out. Okay, so there goes peace at all. And I mean, what did we expect? We've just been launched hundreds of bombs against Iran. Of course they're gonna want revenge, let alone the fact that we killed his father and 48 other leaders, but more reporting from Foundation for Defense of Democracies. They explain Mujtaba signaled to the Iranian diplomats that they could give it a try, but won't go anywhere. It's boxing in negotiators with statements that suggest the path to survival goes through escalation rather than engagement. Anna has been saying all along they're being played for suckers. There are no real negotiations. We're just reloading. And hey, look, we got sea drones now. We launched the sea drones. We restart the bombing, and we say peace is over. So they're getting the same, vibes that we were getting, and realizing that all of this was probably fake. So now, interesting report from the Wall Street Journal, where they explain, the guys who were fighting against the regime, the ones that were protesting, are now on the side of the regime. Why? Because if you bomb their families, they rally around the flag. Everyone who isn't a moron or a propagandist already knew that. But let me give you 2 quick quotes from the story. State broadcaster IRIB, which has long been managed by hardliners, abruptly cut off lead negotiator and Parliament Speaker Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf as he tried to make the point that an earlier hardline president of Iran had also held talks with the US. So that's Iranian state TV basically going, shut up, okay, we're not interested in negotiations anymore. And they say Hamshari, a paper published by the hardline municipal government of the capital, Tehran, ran wanted poster-style images of targets, including Trump, Secretary of State Mark Rubio, Defense Secretary Hegseth, Benjamin Netanyahu, and several European leaders. But Dave, I thought the most interesting part of that Wall Street Journal piece was they talked to several different former regime opponents, including one 34-year-old who's an entrepreneur and had gone out and gotten beat up very badly to the point where he couldn't walk for a couple of days by the Iranian regime. Now he's put on an Iranian uniform and saying, I'm showing up for duty. And they're reporting, this is kind of an ironic twist, that a lot of young people not listening to the mullah's rules about clothing etiquette, right? Coming out without any kind of head covering or hijab, young guys coming out in jeans and t-shirts and tattoos, but saying we're ready to defend Iran. So as we expected, it looks like the war, on top of all of the other problems, was deeply counterproductive in getting rid of this regime.
Yeah. And totally predictably so. I mean, it's been like this in every theater in the global war on terrorism. And this is a very typical thing. It's human nature. Like if you just think about it, not saying these situations are one-to-one, but just to give you an idea of like how to even think about these things. If you could picture for me and you and the audience members who are our age or a little older, if you remember back in the Occupy Wall Street days, right? Big protests out in New York City and other big cities in the country, right? Huge protests, people very upset, kind of left-wing populist in nature, very upset about the banker bailouts and stuff. Barack Obama was president at the time. There's huge protests in the streets, but did they want to overthrow Barack Obama? Well, no, not necessarily. That wasn't exactly the goal. They didn't like the banker bailouts. They wanted things changed. Does that mean because they were out in the streets that they would support China overthrowing Barack Obama? No, that doesn't follow at all. And just because people were out in the streets and furious at their regime that they live under in Iran, that doesn't mean that they would support foreign aggression against, you come in here, I mean, just imagine, you come into Occupy Wall Street and the Chinese go, we're with you, we're socialists or communists also, so we're with this movement, and then they murder 200 little girls on their first day of bombing in an effort to overthrow our government. What do you think? Occupy Wall Street would have just been like, well, we're out on the street, so we have to support. Like, it doesn't make any sense at all. Of course, it didn't work this way. Look, the bottom line is that the Iranian regime was never as unpopular as many of the kind of Zionists and expat hawks made it out like they were. But you could see this right there. I mean, look, it's the most tangible thing, and it makes Donald Trump furious. It's part of what's driving him crazy right now. But he made this whole thing, this narrative about how the people were supposed to rise up and take control of the government. And now Donald Trump, sounding like one of the idiots me and you debate on Piers Morgan, is saying the reason why the people aren't overthrowing the regime is because they slaughtered, now it's up to 52,000. They slaughtered, 20 million of them. And that's why I know. Meanwhile, we can all see the videos of the funeral for the late Ayatollah. There's people out in the millions chanting "Death to America," pro-regime. There's just no reason to believe any of that is true. And in the same way, I've been in this for a long time, and I've been reading these hawks far more than anybody probably should read what they have to say. And every single time we're greeted as liberators narrative, and they're just wrong. They just predict the way people are gonna feel about this. You stop dropping bombs on people's apartment buildings. It doesn't make them love you. You launch wars of aggression, it doesn't make regions more safe. And it's just, we've played this out too many times.
Yeah, so that same guy who was beat up by the regime said, look, I thought they were coming to be against the regime. Then they said they were against our entire civilization.
Yeah, that doesn't help.
Yeah, so he's like, so I grabbed an Iranian flag and showed up, right? So that's how it works. But last thing, Dave, this is the most important part. Look, I think that this next round is going to be the end. Like, I don't mean the end of the war. I mean the end of all these pretenses. We're gonna hit what I call the unraveling. And I think that there's no comeback from this because we burned the bridge behind us. Now, not only Iran, but no one would trust us in peace negotiations. We constantly do fake ceasefires, fake negotiations, and then we double our attack. So the Iranians are not going to come back to the peace table after we betrayed them over and over and over again. I mean, we signed a memorandum of understanding. The Iranians, by the way, again, never reported by our press, or almost never. Their top reason for being upset at the US throughout this entire so-called ceasefire was, they said, look, we said you have to withdraw from Lebanon. You said yes. And then Israel not only didn't withdraw from Lebanon, they went further into Lebanon. So this ceasefire was a giant lie. You never did any of it. We're not going back to the peace table. So Dave, my sense is, look, America thinks, Trump at least thinks, no, we got this. We now control the strait. And so Iran's leverage is gone. Iran absolutely believes they control the strait. So I think we're gonna go into a war, and I think we're not gonna come out of it for a long time, and it's gonna lead to economic calamity, a global economic collapse, and then I would argue then trigger political revolutions in a lot of countries, including this one. So is that too much, or do you think that it could be as calamitous as I think it is?
Well, it could be. I don't know if it will. Look, I'll say this. Okay, so obviously there's something even in Trump's narrative, like even in Hegseth and Trump's narrative right now, you can see there's this obvious hole, this obvious kind of contradiction where it's almost like if I were telling you, hey, I'm in a fist fight with this guy, and you're like, how's the fist fight going? And I go, dude, I've beat the crap out of this guy. He does not want it anymore. He's ready to give up, but he just keeps throwing punches at me, so I'm gonna have to go back and beat him up even more. And you're like, wait, but if he keeps throwing punches at you, it sounds like he hasn't given up yet. Sounds like he's still fighting. So, even in their own narrative, they're admitting this. And clearly, look, what we're seeing here from the beginning of this war is that the calculation changed. Iran was waving the white flag to the Americans for 25 years until this war, including up to and through the 12-day war. That ridiculous, response where they call ahead and make sure all the missiles are shot down and make sure they don't actually kill anyone. They wanted to avoid this war desperately, especially the previous Ayatollah. That calculation changed after they killed this Ayatollah, launched this war, new people in power, new calculation with the new war. But even after this memorandum, obviously there was an admission by Donald Trump that he lost the war and he kind of gave them everything and gave up on all the war goals, but he still tried to mess with them. He still went, well, we'll agree with, as you mentioned, they violated, the US violated the memorandum of understanding right away because Israel continued their war in Lebanon, and Donald Trump and JD Vance and Marco Rubio continued threatening Iran, which was already a violation of the memorandum of understanding. What happened in the Strait is a little bit more of a gray area, but it's still like America was trying to mess with them. They were trying to make a deal with Oman behind their backs. They were trying to make a deal with Israel behind their backs. They're trying to do what they always do. Okay, we'll agree to this, but we'll mess with you. And Iran very clearly went, no, not good enough. then they're happy to go right back to this and close the strait again and go right back to hostilities because they know the position that they're in. Cenk, in terms of your prediction of this being a disaster, I don't know why. After hearing last week on the walk back, Donald Trump admit that the global economy couldn't take any more of this strait being closed, and Donald Trump's unique ability to just totally contradict himself by the end of the day. You know, I've never seen anything like it, including Joe Biden in his most senile. I've never seen a president who can just 100% certainty take one position and then walk away from it the next day. And so I guess I'm a little bit hopeful that he just walks away one more time. But I don't think any deal is happening. I think you're right about that. I think it's either just walk away or we go into the escalation ladder where I do agree with you, like real disaster is on the other side of that. But I agree with you. I don't see if there's any way. I don't see how Donald Trump can make a deal with anyone ever again.
Yeah,
his word is meaningless. So, but I'm hoping he just walks away and you're wrong about the disaster, aspect of this, but we'll see.
From your mouth to God's ears. But speaking of Trump flip-flopping, as Dave pointed out, well, today is Taco Tuesday. So yesterday he said that we're gonna charge the toll of 20%. And right. Today he realized, oh right, that would mean gas prices would go up because oil goes to the strait. He's like, yeah, never mind. Yeah, maybe you should have thought of that yesterday before you blurted it out like an idiot. So, but what Dave said there at the end is critical, guys. We no longer have any room for negotiation. The Iranians won't come back. Nobody will negotiate with us anymore because we've lied in every negotiation and it hasn't been close. So now we're either gonna further escalate till we're in absolute meltdown, or we're just gonna have to go, I guess we lost, and just run away. So those are not good options, and that's the only things that are left.
Well, just to say, it's not that they're such bad options. I mean, honestly, we never needed a memorandum of understanding anyway. We never, look, dude, if there was, as you know, Cenk, if there was overwhelming consensus among supermajorities of the American people, the one thing we knew was the last thing we needed was another unnecessary, unwinnable war. A regime change war in the Middle East. I mean, come on, just the dumbest war ever launched in American history. And now, of course, Ron Paul used to say this. I remember when he was running for president in 2008 and 2012, they used to go, sir, what's your military strategy for Iraq? How would you get out of there? And he used to say, we just marched in, we can just march out. And it's the same with this war. We don't even need to make a deal about the strait. They'll figure it out amongst themselves. All the incentives are to open it up. And as long as we get out of there, Cenk, what's causing the whole problem here is the imbalance that we impose with our total support of Israel. We can just walk away. That's the best case scenario right there. The best case scenario is we get a time machine, we go back in time, and Donald Trump never launches this idiotic war. The second best case scenario is we just walk away right now.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.